Welcome to Homeschool Your Way. I'm your host, Janna Cook, and BookShark's community manager. Today's episode is long awaited. We are on the verge of releasing not one, but two high school levels here at BookShark. Today, I am joined by Amy Ratliff. She is BookShark's curriculum designer. We're going to be talking about the two new levels, which are actually kind of four because we have history and literature for world, and then history and literature for US, both at the high school levels. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let me bring in Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hello, everybody.
I know that people are so excited to see your face and to hear your voice and all the information that you're going to be sharing about what BookShark has been busy doing these last few years, working on these anticipated levels of high school.
I
Before we
am
get into,
so excited too.
I bet you are. I bet
Yeah.
you are. For those of you who have been familiar with BookShark or been around, Amy was immersed in our science for several years as we were updating our levels A through F. And now she has had the refreshing pleasure of being in history for a number of years. Amy, why don't you just quickly give some background about who you are and how you got involved in homeschool?
I mean, it's true. I'm a nerd. Every time I get involved in a different project here, that's my new favorite subject. And I'm just like, okay, science. Science is the best. And now I'm like, history, the best. Like I was reading some of the books that we provided, and I'm like, this is really good stuff. Like stuff I didn't necessarily learn in high school, or maybe I did and then I forgot, and I'm just like getting entranced in all these books again. So yeah, so I work on different subjects here. It's been for years, it's been science, and recently it's been the high school levels here. So I do editing, I do writing, I test science experiments, I read books, I find new books, I write discussion questions, I create maps, all the above. I work with different writers who help us create the program. I work with different illustrators who create the program, and some of my other teammates who are helping me proof and read and come up with ideas and stuff. So yeah, I've been here for, I think, 5 years at this point. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And a unique thing about Amy is that she herself was homeschooled, like myself.
It's true.
So it's neat to see these next generations getting to be involved in what's coming out for the coming generations, because I know when you had a very different experience than I did, your mom was very creative in designing curriculum for you and really letting you do that student led even before it was a thing. And I was more by the book, and I just did what I was given and didn't really venture outside of those parameters in homeschool. And so coming from different perspectives, and yet being both so passionate about getting new material out to the next generations.
Yeah, my mom would pick books up at different homeschool conventions or used book sales or something and made her own stuff. And so I definitely remember, like, if I had an interest in something, she would create a unit study for me, and then we'd go on off and we do that. And then I went to college and I became a teacher for a while, and now I'm here at BookShark. And so I think I mean, I really like creating this curriculum and just thinking about all the conversations that you guys get to have with your kids based off of the different books, because I know that I love these books and I hope that you guys do too.
So really, you're getting paid for what your mom did for free.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
All right. So lay it on us. What is coming out for high school in 2023, 2024?
Yes, we have world history, world literature, US history, and US literature, all four at a high school level. We've been working on this for quite some time, and we are really, really excited that both levels, not just one, but both are coming out this year. If you've been with BookShark for a while, then you might know that for a few months in 2020, we released a world program. And as soon as we released it, the spine of the program went out of print. And so we had to take the entire program away. And it was so sad for everybody here and for all of you. So we're really excited that we've revamped it. with a different spine. And this world history program, I guess one difference that is that this also covers ancient history, so all of world history, whereas the one we released in 2020 was just modern world history. So now we do cover all of world history. The reason for that being is that we know that different states have different high school requirements, and some states want ancient, some states want world. So we made a program that covered enough ancient and modern that we believe that people in all states of America could use it and fulfill the requirements.
What's interesting, Amy, is that as a parent that's been using the program for 7 years now, and you look at our different levels, we have Intro to World Cultures, and then we have year 1 of 2 years of Intro to World History, then the second year. Then we have American History year 1, American History year 2. We have Eastern Hemisphere. Then we start with World History 1, World History 2, American History, and now we're starting again with World History. So what is the distinction for parents who maybe have already done World History levels G and H using Story of the Worlds volume 1 through 4? When that question is posed to us, what is our stance? Why are we doing world history at a high school level?
Yeah, so the overall goal for the scope and sequence of BookShark is to hit the main social studies topics 3 times throughout your kindergarten through high school. So you're going to touch on different culture studies 3 times throughout your entire BookShark career. You will touch on world history 3 times. You'll touch on American history 3 times. So that's always been the goal, is to have like a younger elementary, then like a late elementary, middle school touch, and then another high school touch. So these new programs, I mean, we've had levels I and J out for a while where we talk about American history and the history of science, and those have those are like high level middle school to high school. And so I know that a lot of high schoolers have been using those. But now that we have this high school, that those are going to be like the high school programs. And because I've read these, I can tell you, like, these are definitely more difficult texts. They're more mature texts. There's a lot more spread of information. They're the US history book in particular. For me, I was reading it and I was like, this is more like an AP history book. This is not what I read in high school. This is like more in depth and more analytical, I think, of people's beliefs throughout American history, rather than just facts of like when this thing happened and why and like where and who was involved. It gives you more of a glimpse into the people's mindsets and beliefs and why one thing led to another. So yeah, so it's just definitely, it's the next step. It goes deeper. We've never shied away from from dark subjects. We believe that exposing kids to some of the real world trials at younger ages develops like a sense of compassion and like wanting to help people. So while we've already introduced the topics of like the Holocaust and genocide and like helping those less fortunate than you in younger grades, like these high school levels, they dive right into it quite a lot. So I do definitely think that it'll expand a high schooler's mind, will let them see a deeper view of the world, and hopefully they really, really get into it.
I think something that I have heard said, and I think it applies very appropriately here, is that when we're introducing these topics, these timelines, these historical figures in the elementary ages, we're creating hooks. And as they age up, what we're able to hang on that hook can get weightier and weightier, right? So we really are giving them space to be able to have a framework for what we're talking about. I don't know about you, but I barely remember second grade. I remember my teacher and maybe some of my friends, right? But I do know that as I progressed through school, when I was reintroduced to a topic that I had already learned about, when we delved deeper, I was able to immerse myself even more because I had context. I have a hook and a place in my mind that goes, oh, that's right. This is happening here. This is why it's happening. So when people are asking, like, well, if I've already done one, why would I do another? Well, the point being is because you are able to dive deeper, to look more critically at the surroundings of what's going on. And it isn't a story so much anymore, like it is in the younger levels. Now we're talking about real people with real consequences that now affect the things around us even today.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, well, one of the tools that we have that all you BookShark users are quite familiar with is the timeline book. And the reason that you can reuse the timeline book is to kind of support what you just said, Janna, is um, I'm going to keep on using this year after year, and I'm going to write this new historical figure or event, and I'm going to see that last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I also wrote this other event, and I kind of remember it a little bit, but it was years ago, but now I have that connection, and like, you're starting to build a web of knowledge and interconnect everything, and that's really important.
That is really like the exciting part of education, is
Mhm.
because the more you know, the more, in my case, opinion I may have about this situation, but the
Mhm.
more I'm passionate to talk about it because the details do start to click and fall in line. And so now I am more aware of the why. And like I said, the consequences and how it all fits together. I knew as a kid the shot heard round the world, right? And I knew the phrase and I knew the location, but it wasn't until I was in high school and college that I really started to understand the implications of what that phrase meant. And so I think that is what we are doing as we build on these levels and go deeper and wider, or have places to go within the same timeline, because the fact of the matter is history, it doesn't change. We all know, from whence we began.
Mhm.
And so as we repeat it in the sense of learning, when we add more context is how it becomes, like that web is a great picture of how it works. So let's jump in. World history for high school.
Yes.
What will it include?
Okay, world history. So I guess a little background. So when we create our programs, we usually find the spine for the history, so the main book, and then we surround it with all different sorts of literature to integrate with the spine and to build upon it. So this book right here, The Decay from the Dawn of Civilization to Present Day History, this is the spine of our new world history program. And so it does go from, like the ancient Mesopotamia all the way to modern day. And that includes like different contemporary issues like social media and global population and recent presidents, recent wars, and stuff like that. So this book is a little bit more encyclopedic. It has like 2-page spreads on each different culture or nation or topic. Sometimes it has little biographies of different people throughout the entire history of the world. So there's a lot in this book. It's huge. So yeah, so this is the spine. And then we surround it again with all the different books that help support. So when you are reading, sorry, I have my book list here. So you're going to read a book about ancient Egypt. You'll read The Art of War when you're learning about ancient China. You'll read the Iliad. There's a book about Genghis Khan and how he really kind of created a lot of modernism in the world, which you never really think, but like he kind of he was very transformative to world cultures. Um, let's see, you read about the family Romanov. You read about Winston Churchill, Cry the Beloved Country with apartheid in South Africa. Um, so yeah, so there's, I guess I didn't count, but there's at least a dozen different books that you read alongside that help you delve into and see. I mean, one of the big things that I really like about our literature books is it's easy to read the spine and see people as just like flat characters and say, oh yeah, this person did this and they did that and then they died. Whereas when you read the literature, you get to know their thoughts, their emotions, like they become a 3D character. And then you see the world through their eyes. Um, and then history comes to life and you don't forget that feeling.
It also demonstrates and shows the implications of, like, if a person in history makes a decision they're passionate about, right? That's their platform. Knowing their background, their history, what their lens that they're looking through really helps understand why they have that platform and why they're so passionate about something. And then on this side of history, we get to see the implications of the choices that they made and the impacts that they had, and now we're living that out. I think it's so important to be able to tie that all together. Otherwise, you are just getting facts and figures, and it really is sterile without the literature pieces to bring it alive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the books that I didn't mention is called China's Long March. And it took me a while of reading to realize that the Mao that they were like it's about this army that's marching through China and they're trying to get to place for military reasons. And it took me a while to realize that the Mao they were talking about that was like held in pretty high honor was like Mao Zedong, and that most of us don't think he's a very good guy. And I was like, oh, well, this is a very different perspective of him that I never thought I'd had before. And it's just a different light in seeing him as the logical, like very strategic leader and why he got to the place that he did later in life. So, yeah.
It's important to be able to make those connections, because otherwise we can villainize, and not to say shouldn't or should, but we can villainize characters, people throughout history through our own lens and not having the context and their perspective of what's going on. I had heard it said that we can't judge another culture or time period by our own standards and values. We have to judge it by theirs. And if we aren't immersed in theirs, we can't judge it properly.
Hmm.
And maybe judge is the wrong word, maybe more evaluate it.
Analyze, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that's world history. So US history is going to be similar, in that we have this book is called The Land of Hope. This is the spine, which earlier I was mentioning it gives me more of an AP history feel. So its author just goes through lots of the whys and what people believed, specific people, and also just the culture in general. Like, what did the culture of the colonists believe that made them think that they could come here and settle this crazy country? You know? And then rebel against England. Why? How did that happen? What were the threads that led to that? So Land of Hope is the spine for US history, and that's surrounded by books about like the Mayflower. You get to read a little bit of the Constitution. You read about Thomas Jefferson's fight against the Tripoli pirates, the Civil War, obviously. Then we have like the Grapes of Wrath, is about the Depression, and Esperanza Rising, which is a newer book that I think is also about the Depression. Finding Langston, where you get to learn about Langston Hughes, and so it goes all the way from early America to pretty modern. Actually, even has stuff about Obama and Trump in it, so it's a very recent spine for us.
I'm so glad to hear. It's refreshing to know that we are finding good spines, good literature that we can build off of, that is more modern, so that it can address the things that our students are currently going through, or at least their parents have gone through, as opposed to only looking back to things that maybe their grandparents had gone through. Although my kids love to call me a boomer, which I am not,
You
but
are so not a boomer.
they just think it's so funny when they say it. So, another unique perspective to these two levels that are coming out, that it may be a little bit different than what we've had in the past, and I'll have you speak to this specifically, are the sources. What type of sources are we going to be linking to these programs?
Yeah, so this is different from other guides that we've carried, and I'm pretty excited about it. So in addition to the spine and the literature that you read, I think every week has at least one or two primary resources that you read. And these can be like just a couple of paragraphs that we print into our guide to a couple of pages long. And these are different excerpts from like the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You know, you're reading about the pharaohs and you don't really understand their religion, but then you go and you read, like, it's like a set of 40 prayers or something, I think they would say, and you just read that and you see what they did and what they believed and what they prayed, you know, like every day back then. Then there are other ones. Let's see, my favorite, like Martin Luther King speeches. There are the Hammurabi's Code. There are FDR speeches. There are letters from Columbus to Queen Isabella. So there's just all sorts of primary resources written by the people that you are studying that are also printed in our guide. And I guess that goes back to our earlier point of you have to know what the people at that time were thinking and how they viewed the world. And so reading things that they actually wrote and recorded is it's like really key to understanding why they did what they did.
I think that is very unique to these two levels than we've ever done before, but I think pretty unique to any history program that I've been involved with personally, that we would make sure that there are primary resources so that we aren't just saying somebody's telling us a story of what they learned about Columbus or X, Y, and Z. We're reading what they actually penned personally. So it makes it so much more impactful because our brains don't have to decipher, is this true? Is this someone's bent? Is this how it was perceived? I think that having those primary resources is really going to make this program stand out in homeschool curriculum.
I hope so. I definitely didn't get primary resources when I was in high school, and I went to a very good public high school. So I really liked it. Really, I think it, like you said, it adds a completely different dimension to this program as well.
All right. So do you have anything else to say about the histories before we move on to the literature?
Sure. So a couple other things about these histories. So along the lines of the primary resources, we also have many research reports throughout the year for history. I don't know about you, but I remember doing lots of term papers when I was in high school for my social studies classes. So some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, some of them we let the student pick whatever research they want to do within the time frame that they're studying right then. Other ones we say, well, like this is something that we really want our students to know more about, so go do research and do a report on it. So the type and the length vary throughout the year. Sometimes it's written, sometimes it could be oral, sometimes it could be a slideshow, whatever. So those are both in world and US history. Another thing is that world history specifically comes with current events. So that's another thing that we think is very important for high schoolers to begin practicing, is to look at current news sources, know what's going on in the world, be able to have a short conversation about it with their parents or teachers or some other trusted adult. And so we also schedule those throughout the year of go watch the news and then tell somebody what you learned, or go read like 3 different articles online and explain that to your parents, or ask questions if you don't understand part of it. So that's part of world history as well.
And if you want to see what is available, our website will be updated as this podcast comes out. So make sure to go to bookshark.com and you can look at the different history levels that we have. You want to specifically look for World History High School and US High School.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those of you listening right now, World is coming out, or it's coming out April 2023. And US will be coming out this summer of 2023. So it's a couple months behind the World, but it is nearing its final stages. So that's very exciting.
Now, one thing I love about BookShark and will continue to be passionate about is that we couple literature, not only in the history, but other types of literature that fall in line with what you're learning about in history. We call it integration. So let's get into how world literature is integrated into our world history.
Yep. So our literature programs, so they involve a little bit more fiction, but they're often tied to the history as well. So, like, for example, if you're reading about the French Revolution in world history, um, you're also reading A Tale of Two Cities in world literature, which does happen around the French Revolution. Now, it's not like a real story, obviously, but it's an important piece of classical literature, and it functions really well to accompany your study of the French Revolution. So, stuff like that. I don't know. Do you want to hear some of the titles?
I would love to hear some of the titles, Amy.
Okay. So part of our world literature program, so similar to our history, it kind of goes chronologically, and I guess to clarify, you could do world literature by itself. It can be standalone. You don't have to do history in order to do the literature program, but I do think they complement each other so well that you will get the most out of our program if you use both the history and the literature at the same time. Like The Tale of Two Cities, you can read that whenever, but it works really well if you know about the French Revolution. So similarly, our literature kind of is chronological. So we start with some pretty early texts, like you're reading about the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is Mesopotamia, long time ago. Then you read about Siddhartha, which is also a long time ago in India. Then you're reading about like Oedipus and Julius Caesar, Rome, but both are more fictional stories about people who lived in those times. We have Beowulf, I said A Tale of Two Cities. Then we also get into the modern times, which, a lot happens in the 20th century. So we have like All Quiet on the Western Front about World War I. Things Fall Apart about this African tribe that gets split up in colonists and stuff. Night about Jewish pogroms in World War II. So that's a fun book. And then we also get into some dystopian literature. We have both 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 in here.
Now you're speaking my language because that is my wheelhouse. I love dystopian literature. And I wasn't really exposed to it until college. So, the other one that we have in our world history, we talked about Cry the Beloved Country. I mean, these were things that
Yeah.
I didn't even get exposed to until I was way out of high school and picking the classes that I wanted to take, in my last 2 years. So it's exciting to me to be able to introduce these to my daughter at a younger age, but then still be just as passionate about it and be able to talk about it with her because I do so much love this type of literature.
Me too. And I guess if you're an adult listening to this and you don't have a high school student, but you want to learn more about history and literature, you will find everything in here fascinating because, yeah, I didn't read most of these in high school, and now I'm reading them as an adult. And I think, I mean, maybe education is wasted on the young. I don't know, but like I learned so much as an adult than I did back when as a teenager. So I'm loving it myself.
So what are some of the language arts supplements that are going to be included in these packages?
Yes, and that brings up another good point. You BookShark customers, you families, you know that we have labeled all of our levels A, B, C, all the way up to J. These new high school levels, we are not giving them a specific letter name or number name. We're just calling them High School World and High School US because we want you to be able to use them in whatever order is best for you. And we want to do that because we know a lot of school districts have more strict standards around when you do what in high school levels. So we want to make sure that you guys have the flexibility you need to do whatever you need to do to record and report properly. So I say all this because our language arts supplements, those do go by grades. We have 9th grade vocabulary, 10th grade vocabulary. So we allow you to mix and match the LA supplements with your high school program in whatever order you're going to go with it. So we also give you the options between two different vocabulary programs. We have Worldly Wise, which most of you know and love, and I also love. We are also introducing vocabulary from classical roots. This came about because students really benefit from studying more classical root words in preparation for taking some standardized tests and stuff. So if you know, like photo is a root word for light, then you know photography and photosynthesis both have something to do with light. And so that is very helpful. So anyways, sorry. I have a soft spot for classical roots. That's what I studied in high school. So I get very excited about it. So those are the two vocabulary options. And then you also have a set of analogies books, which is also important to begin preparing. Obviously, analogies like comparing one thing to another thing. Those connections are also really important for the standardized tests later in high school. So just getting into that. So those are also optionally offered with our program.
So you went through and told us a few of the titles from world literature. What about US literature?
Okay, in US literature, so we do have The Winter People about Native Americans as the Bostonians are coming in. We have The Tempest, we have The Scarlet Letter, The Crucible, The Kidnapped Prince, which is about an African named Equano, he gets kidnapped, unfortunately, and sold into slavery, and he gets passed around. And this is a real life story where he writes his journal about it all later, and that gets published into a book. So it's a pretty cool story, although sad. We have Huckleberry Finn, My Antonia, Echo by Pam Munoz Ryan, The Wednesday Wars, Fever in 1793. So a lot of also just really good pictures, glimpses into the minds of the characters at different points in American history.
I think now would be a great time to point out that there may be some books that you or your children have read at younger years. And as you are deep diving back into these levels of history, it might be brought up again. We reuse it, we really think it's a great book. But as you were just saying earlier, that when you reread these things, either as an adult, a young adult, or an older adult, you really have a different perspective. You have different hooks to be hanging the story and the context on. So don't be afraid if you have looked at some of these things and you go, oh, we already read that, we already read that, we already read that, because the questions that are going to be asked as you're maybe rereading through some of this literature is going to be very different from when you read it the first time. So for example, one of the books that I have actually already read twice, because I've done level F with my olders and my youngers, is Seven Daughters for Seven Sons. It's a phenomenal book. And I am finding out, I will back up. I've always said I don't like to reread books. I have a pretty good memory. I don't care to reminisce about something. I want to do the next thing. I want to add more. But as I'm aging, I'm seeing the value in rereading the books because of this very concept. As I'm going back through the story, my mood could be different. My mindset is different. Just how I'm connecting with the story is different. And so as you reread that book, or your student does, because you still can use it as a read aloud, you can use our program however you choose and however it works in your family, but your student is going to be reading it possibly through their own voice with their own connotations and their own context. And so it's different than when you read it out loud to them years ago. Now they're processing it in their own way with their own context. And I think there's so much value in that. So I just want to encourage families not to shy away from things that if they've already read the books, because we're prompting, asking questions, and putting a program together that's going to be very unique to their experience prior when they read the book before.
Yeah, and definitely within the context, if it's been years since you've read it, you know a lot more about the world now, especially if you first read it when you were 9 and now you're 15, you're going to have a completely different perspective on it.
What else can we be expecting in this language arts program, Amy?
Sure. So similarly to our other language arts programs, in addition to reading the fantastic literature that we give you all year long, we give you a series of creative expression, which is just what we call our different writing assignments. Every week you have a different writing assignment with instructions and a rubric for easy grading. So every week is going to be different, but in general, there are 4 large types of writing that we focus on, and we cycle through those types throughout the year. So we have practice writing informative writing, like just how to do something. We practice writing narratives. We practice doing research reports, and we practice writing an argumentative essay. And so obviously none of those are just single week assignments. But there'll be like a few weeks surrounding each topic. And you go through those 4 topics. I think it's 3 times throughout the year, three cycles throughout the year. And that happens in both world and US literature. And then, yeah, again, I mentioned just like elsewhere, we have those rubrics at the end of the week. Sometimes part of the rubric will be grayed out, and that means that your student probably hasn't learned how to do that little bit yet, but you see like that's going to be where you are going. You grade them on the white ones, the gray ones, you read and you think maybe they'll need to work on that one later because my kid's grammar does not work very well. So that's there for both the parents and the students. It's in both the parent and the student guide. Obviously the parents are the ones grading, but students need to know what they're going to be graded on. So that's why I put the rubrics in both guides.
Good. And then what's the final piece of our program with literature?
Right. The other thing is we do schedule poetry throughout the year. So each of our levels come with its own poetry book that you read at least 2 or 3 poems, I believe, every week. We've also added on one additional type of book in our US literature, which is the elements of style. And so I use that back in high school. I know of just different, making sure that you know how to cite things well, that the paragraph structure is fine, that the sentence structure is fine, the noun, verb, adjectives. So we also include that book in the US literature package.
I mean, all of this is slightly overwhelming, but very exciting that these are coming out. Some may wonder why we decided to release 2 in the same year, but I think your explanation of the fact that people do things in different orders and different states and different schools, if you are tied to them, require different things. So I think that satisfies that kind of itch to know, well, why would you do it this way? Another nice option that we have provided in our lower levels that will be extended into the high school is our virtual add-on. And so the virtual seat will be a customization as you're ordering your package. And if you're unfamiliar with that, we do have a YouTube channel about BookShark Virtual that you can get yourself familiarized with the process and what it actually provides you. But in a nutshell, it does provide a space online where your student is going to be doing their assessments instead of paper to pencil. They'll be doing it online or uploading their work so that it's a great keeper of record. It does have automatic scoring. If it's an objective question, if it's subjective, then you or a teacher, depending on how you use our program, would have to go in and score it. But it's a great add-on for independence. All of the schedules are there. I'm a user of the virtual option with my daughter. She's 13, and I get a ding on my cell phone every time she turns in an assignment. So as I'm busy working, I know that she is busy doing her school, and I don't have to feel like at the end of the night, I have to go track everything down and see where she's at. So definitely a bonus for parents who feel like they want their child to be more independent, but also they are just as busy. And it's just a way for them to be able to keep record and have those things stored in one centralized place. It really does make homeschooling super simple. Not easy. We both know it's not easy, but it simplifies the record keeping and the scoring. So that will be available on these 4 levels of high school that we're releasing. Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to kind of walk us through what these levels are and the thought processes behind how they got put together. We are so excited to see your passion, that the person who's actually working with the curriculum is just as excited about it as the parents who receive it. And we hope that all of that excitement is going to translate to the students who start doing it. So thank you so much for your dedication to furthering the education of homeschool students around the world.
Aw, thanks for having me, Janna. And yeah, if you guys like this program, please email us because I want to share excitement with you.
We love positive feedback. Thank you guys so much for taking the time for listening. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.